everyone, and welcome to the Code Clarity podcast. I'm Rena.
And I'm Jean. Today, we're going to discuss a question that we were asked recently, which is, can I buy a doctor a cup of coffee? It's a very simple question, Rena. Has it got a simple answer?
Yes, the answers are yes, but also no. Because I hate saying this, but it does depend, doesn't it? So I think these kind of short, simple questions, you end up as a signatory or reviewer having to go, hang on a minute, and spending way more time asking really good questions to understand a bit more.
Okay, so what sort of questions do you think that we would need to ask in order to give that useful advice back?
Yeah, well, to quote Simon Sinek, always start with the why, right? So this is actually the most important one I would always say. And let's assume, for the sake of everyone listening, that it's a sales rep who's asked this question. It's a sales rep that wants to buy the coffee for the doctor. I think my first question would be why? Why do you want to buy the coffee? What is the need? And just a little bit more about the circumstances that's brought them to ask this question of us.
Okay, so if the sales rep, let's go with that, the sales rep says, well, I made an appointment to see one of my customers. He's very busy between clinics, and he said, that's great, I can squeeze you in at this time, but do you know what, that's normally when I grab a cup of coffee just to keep myself going. Can you just bring that along with you, and then we'll have the top for the coffee? What would you say to
See, I'd be okay with that because, at the end of the day, the code doesn't talk about coffee and stuff. The code talks about the general principle is all subsistence. And subsistence has to be, considered in line with, well, education, which we'll talk about in a minute, but also, is it at the right time? So are we buying them a coffee at 1 a.m. in the morning, or are we buying them a coffee at 10:30, 11 a.m. when they would normally be heading off for a coffee? So if the rep said that to me, I go, yeah, that sounds kind of all right.
Okay, and so if they
what do you think? I was going to say, just picking up on the education piece that I mentioned, what would you say is the right amount of education to justify a coffee? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20?
It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, there has to be education. The first point would be there does have to be some education. So they just popping in with a cup of coffee to say hi, I think is then starting to go, subsistence always has to be secondary to educational content. So there has to be some sort of educational content to the meeting. You do have to be meeting them to talk about something educational. But yeah, the amount for a coffee, I'd say probably a 10-15 minute meeting is reasonable to have a cup of coffee with. I think I would be comfortable with that. And I guess what I was going to say, circling back on that, is if they then said, my question would be, well, where would this coffee take place? Because if they said, well, I would normally pop to the canteen or the local Costa to pick up that coffee, walk with me, and we'll get a coffee together, would that present any problems?
Yeah, so I think we do need to ask, apart from how long is the education, where is it happening, and where is it might be okay for the rep to pick up a coffee from somewhere else and bring it to the clinician's closed office to have a promotional discussion. And don't forget, promotional discussions are still educational. You running through a sales aid and having a normal call is still educational. So I think it becomes trickier the more we don't quite know where that promotional discussion is taking place. And if it's taking place in a corridor or in a public area, it's a big problem because you can be overheard.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you think that we need to consider? So we've said we'd want to know why they want to do it, what the sort of content of that meeting would look like, where that meeting is going to take place. And I think that's a really good point that we can come back to another day of. Promotion is always educational. They're not separate things. But what else would you need to know, or what else would you consider?
Yeah, so I think this is a lot of questions for the poor average rep to deal with, both of us asking. So I think firstly, the company should have asked these questions already and decided, are they going to allow this to sit in their SOP or not? If their SOP says, yes, we'll allow it, they've probably got some of these criteria in there, hopefully already. I did an audit for a company that allowed their reps to buy doctors a coffee. And what I observed was they had all the right criteria for that. And what happened over a period of time is what we call the creep sets in. And the creep really is kind of the consequence of not monitoring. So on day one, oh, beautiful, lovely. If it's not monitored, by month 2, month 3, they were buying coffees in Starbucks, and on the receipts, the Starbucks was a few miles away. And then by month 6, they weren't just buying Starbucks, they were buying patisserie Valerie cakes and taking them in for the hospital department. And this is where we go, my God, if you told me that at the beginning, I'd have said, hang on a minute, you can't provide subsistence to the secretaries and other teams without having provided any education at all. But because of the creep factor, people get a bit kind of okay with just a coffee, don't they?
It's comfortable. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what would you now say, Jean, off the back of all of those, the horror story plus the big questions, what would our top tips now be for anyone listening?
So I'd say the top tips for people seeking an answer to those simple questions is give as much information as you can to whoever you're asking it of. So be open, be transparent, give a full question. And for those giving the advice, it's that stand back and think about what is it they're actually asking, and think around the question, and maybe ask some follow-up questions in order to get the full information, in order that your answer can be useful and practical.
Good, great advice. A good signatory isn't one that knows all the answers, it's one that asks all the right questions.
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you so much, Jean.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.